Welcome everyone to the August 18th meeting of the Wakefield Conservation Commission. My name is Eleanor Axelrod. I am the co-chair or the vice chair of the Wakefield Conservation Commission, subbing this evening for Paul Wendelgas, the chair who cannot attend. To start off the meeting, I am going to take a roll call. So I'll start with you, Jennifer.
Here.
Barbara,
Here.
Drew,
Here.
and James.
Here.
Welcome. And we have Ethan Fleming and Judy, our clerk, also in attendance. Our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from August 4th, 2026. Did everybody have a chance to review them, and did anybody have comments?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 4th.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so moved. I'm gonna go again. Jennifer,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
James, I'm gonna skip over you since you weren't at the last meeting. So approved. Thank you, everyone. Our next item on the agenda opens at 7:05. It is a request for determination of applicability, and it's a continued hearing for 123rd Vernon Street. Susan and John Sabatelli for the construction of an 800 square foot, one-story accessory dwelling unit on piers within 100 feet of a wetland resource area. I'm going to give it just one more minute for them to join, but are they both present? Judy or Ethan, did you get an indication whether the applicants would be attending this evening?
I had not heard from them. Last I heard, you guys were making a site visit. I think that was last week.
Okay. I guess we can discuss it without them. Is that usually what happens, Judy, in these matters?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Usually if they plan to come, they would have said. I think where it's was pretty straightforward. That may have been the reason they didn't come.
Okay. All right. Shall I open it up to, did everybody have a chance to attend the site walk? James, I know you wouldn't have had, but
I did not. Unfortunately, I was sick.
I did. It's pretty straightforward.
I saw your photographs. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, I tried to get a wider shot. I didn't take too many. But where he'd staked it out is pretty self-explanatory, where the little access port for a car would go and all that jazz, but seemed pretty straightforward.
Jennifer, how about you? I'm going to pull up the, or if somebody else wants to pull it up and share it, the plan, so that James can follow along.
I do have the plan up on my computer, so I can't see that.
Okay. I have it, but it's upside down. So, Do you guys mind if I share quickly?
That would be great.
Okay. I was out of town, so I attended kind of on my own on Sunday afternoon. So I guess the questions, I mean, did people have follow-up questions after the site visit?
I think what would be most helpful for me is to see again where the 100-foot buffer is approximately for the wetland.
Do you mean like with Mass Mapper or on the plan?
Yeah, on the plan.
Okay, I think I interpreted this, well, that's not the 100-foot. I think he's saying this is 84.
84 feet from the
Property line.
okay, from the rear property line
Yeah,
to okay,
yeah.
the wetland.
I had actually follow-up questions on this. I noticed, well, I guess how did we get a set? One of the things I was thinking about is, when I looked through and did some research, is accessory dwelling units when they're standalone are not typically treated as accessory to an existing building. And hence part of the normal exemptions, where you have patio, pool that are connected with an existing home because you have to run, typically have to run independent plumbing, sewer, electric. So these were things I'm not sure we really talked about at the last meeting. And while the work is kind of far away, I just wanted to understand a little bit more about what would be involved and sort of just be clear on the limit of disturbance.
It sounds like they would be planning to run utilities from their house or from the town. I guess that would be under the yard into the ADU.
Yeah, I think he was mentioning when I was there that they were looking into putting possibly a second meter, depending on, you know, what they want to do. Um, so I don't know if that would be, daisy chain from the house or like you said, like a separate run. Um, but I remember he said he didn't even, go ask anybody about plans yet because he wanted to go through us first just to make sure.
And then
That would all be between from the ADU and the current house, so on the opposite side of where the wetland is today.
Mhm.
It wouldn't be
And-
going any closer to the wetland.
Okay, it's just who, like, is he going to dig his own utilities and connect them to the town? Or I guess my question is more around contractors that would be hired. What's the level of work involved if they have to? I'm not a civil engineer, but if they have to, I don't know, dig what's the standard drop for plumbing? Is that 2.5 feet? How involved is that? Is there stuff that needs to be stored? Would they
I recall them saying he would be doing the work on the house. So I assume that would also include the utilities, but exact locations would probably be approved by the town, like with the buildings permit, for example.
And then what was the distance between the ADU and I guess, the fence? Because it's sort of drops off there.
I'm not sure where the fence is. I think that is 7.5 foot setback to the edge of the property. I didn't get a chance to see exactly where the fence was.
Okay. And a notice was run in the paper?
Yes.
Have we just approved others like this where it's, kind of just an idea and we don't know the level of work that could be involved?
Yeah, this is pretty standard for what we see with an RDA. Usually, like if the utilities are closer to the wetland, that's something we would see on the plan. But like if the ADU is approvable, the utilities are usually like they go along with the project, and they're less impactful. So it's pretty standard. From what I've seen in like recent discussions about ADUs, it sounds like when they're attached, they're not exactly entitled to the exemptions, but when they're detached, that's when they're seen similar to like a shed or a patio, like you had mentioned.
That's interesting because I had researched and found the opposite, that because of all the, it's a separate, like single family dwelling unit that requires separate plumbing, bathroom, electric, all those things, it's typically excluded from accessory, whereas normally you're putting, either way, the majority of the work will be done a good distance from the wetland. I guess my concern is if there's going to be a lot of digging and, just wanting to get a better sense of what that looks like. Are they going to need to add in a second driveway? Like I wasn't sure about that.
The driveway, I believe, is on the plan. They said they were extending it from their original driveway.
So this is going to go back to the right?
Yes, I think you can sort of see it with like a dotted line on there about the approximate location of the driveway, and then it'll end around the middle of the yard.
Okay,
They're moving the shed as well.
okay. Something you mentioned was we could not put conditions on it. Like, for instance, I wouldn't want them stockpiling material kind of behind the shed, given the slope down there, during construction.
Yeah, I would be surprised if that's something they would do. It wouldn't make much sense to stockpile it there. You could add it as a condition if it's simple, but what I was saying was anything complicated, I'd recommend not having as a condition just because there's not much assurance that that has to be followed.
Mhm.
Usually, the WPA would require stockpiling outside of 50 feet. So, the distance wise, it's fine, but I don't see a reason why they would do it like on the slope. So you could add it as a condition if you wanted to.
Jennifer, Drew, any concerns?
I think that makes sense. If that's a concern, then putting that as a condition. Yeah, but it does seem like it's, yeah, well outside 50 feet. Their property line even, I think.
Mhm. Um, okay. And then did they talk about whether they were removing trees or not? Any within the 100 foot that would fall under the tree replacement policy?
They
I don't
didn't.
think they're,
Go ahead, Ethan.
I was saying I don't think they were planning on it.
Yeah, I don't, in terms of removing trees, I don't believe so. I think the one thing they had mentioned is possibly removing a large branch from, I don't even know what kind of tree it was. Could have been an oak. It was very, very large, and one of the branches would overhang essentially where that ADU would go. And that was the only thing that I heard them say about that. The rest of the trees are on the boundary line, essentially. The fence, you know, touches trees, um, where the boundary line is. So I'm not too sure.
Okay.
Yeah, my impression was they weren't 100% sure about tree removal. I thought they did want to remove the oak tree that's at the very back of the property, right on the property line or right inside the property line. Um, I have a photo. I looked at the tree on the visit. I'm not an arborist, obviously, but I think their impression was that the tree was declining health and possibly dying. And to me, it does look like it is. And then I think, yeah, either removing or significantly cutting back the large tree and possibly removing, I think, a smaller tree to, I guess, north of the ADU. I think probably like right around the 100-foot line. Um, which is a small tree, and I don't, um, I always think it's a good idea to preserve trees, for many reasons, but I don't think that tree has, impact on the wetlands at the distance it's at. Um, so I think that brings up, the tree removal policy, perhaps. And whether we want to ask them to replace trees they cut.
So Ethan, would it be acceptable to put two conditions, something like not to stockpile, I guess, behind the shed or a certain distance, and then, the understanding is that the Wakefield tree policy applies to tree removals within 100 feet of a wetland.
Sure. So, like the small trees and like the trimming of the branch, you would want to see.
Branches, no, 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 no. I think that makes sense, but I think, you know, I would encourage them to save, the trees as possible. They are helpful in terms of taking up less water, but we do have the policy.
So if they asked about like removing the tree, I should just say it should be held to the standard of the tree policy.
Yeah, we have
Is that
a
what you're
tree
getting?
policy, shouldn't we? Yeah.
Mm.
To me, when I went by, I thought it looked reasonably healthy. It definitely needed limbing, but they can live a long time with hollows and stuff like that. I didn't see anything that stood out. But obviously, if it's a danger to the house or something, but it's good to make people aware of the tree policy.
Yeah, I think their big concern with that back one was there was definitely some dead large limbs, like 4 inch in diameter, hanging over their fence, possibly rail trail area. And I think that was their concern, was getting those at least, taken down to prevent whether it be damage to the ADU or their fence or possibly landing within the paved walkway. I don't think they'd seemingly have a problem with that. It sounds like what they were wanting to do anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. So can I get a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, I guess, what would that be? Approve the RDA with addition of two conditions for 123 Vernon Street.
I'll second that motion.
I think we want to just clarify that we want to make a decision to issue a negative determination of applicability. Is that correct, Ethan?
Yeah, either would work, but it would be a negative determination, which means you're saying no, the work does not need a permit, so you can go ahead and do it, which approves the work.
Right, subject to the two conditions about not stockpiling construction material and debris, I guess, beyond the shed, and just consult the commission if they want to remove trees within the 100 feet of the wetland, but branch trimming is fine. So
Okay.
can we do, or can I get a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
You have to poll everyone, Eleanor.
Oh, right, thank you, Judy, I appreciate that. Jennifer,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Paul is absent, and I myself am a yes.
Barbara?
Yes,
Oh, and Barbara, thank you. Gosh, you have to have your, you vanished.
thank you. Yes,
So moved.
Will I need to vote as well on this?
This one, you wouldn't vote only because it's continuing from the last meeting, which you didn't attend.
Gotcha.
Did
The
you get
next-
sworn in, James?
What?
I
Yes.
was asking if you got sworn in. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Bless you, by the way, James. I saw you sneezing a bit there.
I'm so sorry.
No, no, don't apologize.
I don't know what's come over me.
That's okay.
Sorry, and I'm going to apologize in advance if you hear a dog barking. That's why I wear headphones in my McDonald's headset.
Hmm.
Hey everyone, this is Nicholas DeCola. Eleanor, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Thank you. I apologize. This is 7:15. We're running behind. We're opening it up for the request for determination of applicability to 23 Montrose Avenue, Lawrence Gamst, for the construction of a 24 by 22 foot two-car garage with associated utilities within 100 feet of a wetland.
Yeah, so Eleanor, I'm the homeowner of 23 Montrose Ave. Lawrence Gamst is my contractor, but he wasn't able to make it tonight, so I'm here representing myself. I've brought the plans that I had drawn up with the wetland outlines and my property boundaries and everything. I'm not sure if that's where we would like to start. I can share out the plans and maybe go from there if that works.
I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, great.
And thank you for interrupting me. I was talking away.
I use Zoom all the time for work, so I can I myself am caught speaking on mute all the time. Um, can everybody see my screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Um, so yeah, just going over the plans. So the proposed garage is 24 feet wide by 22 feet deep. It's going to be placed where my existing shed is. So I have photos that I can show you as well. We're essentially going to be removing the shed and replacing it with the two-car garage. Um, the distance from the wetlands, I had this mapped out by the surveyor. So the far left corner of the garage would be 57 feet. If you can see that there, I can actually zoom in a bit more maybe. Yeah, and the other corner of the garage would be 63 feet from the wetlands. And then from a utilities perspective, we're just doing electrical. There's no plumbing or HVAC, just for like lighting. And the plan there is to dig a trench around the existing driveway to run the electrical from the current feed that supplies my house. Um, and for a foundation, it's going to be a concrete slab, but they are pouring like a 4 foot wide by 16-inch deep. Well, that's the plan to go around the garage, and then the rest will just be a slab within that foundation. But I guess I'll pause there and see if there's any questions I might be able to answer.
Uh, Explain that again, the 4 foot wide, 16-inch deep.
Yeah, so they're not pouring like a whole 4 feet deep foundation. It's just 4 feet deep by 16 inches wide as the perimeter of the garage, and then the rest is going to be crushed stone with the poured concrete slab. Essentially, they're not doing a full 4 feet of concrete for the whole garage, just the perimeter. And that's because it's not going to have a second story floor or like anything above. It's just for two vehicles.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to open it up to questions from the commission.
The roof material, what will the roof material be? And what's the slope of the roof?
The roof material is going to be asphalt shingles, and I can get the actual slope of the roof. I have it somewhere in the architectural plans here. Let me just try to pull that up. It's going to take me a moment to find that. My apologies.
Not to worry, I was thinking of just the runoff.
Does anybody else have questions?
I do. But I can wait until.
Oh, go ahead.
So I was curious to hear a little bit more about what I know it hasn't been sort of, I think, surveyed by a wetland scientist, but just what's the nature of the wetland and also, if there will be tree cutting around the wetland.
So there will be no tree cutting around the wetland. I actually did have to have one tree removed. Um, I don't know how many months ago this was, but I actually spoke with Ethan and worked with an arborist to get the necessary approvals to have that one tree taken out that was behind the shed previously. Um, so there's no additional plans to remove any more trees. And then I don't know the specific wetland type. Would I be able to find that on the GIS map? Is there like a
Well,
distinction?
I'm just curious, does it hold water? Or how
Oh,
much of the year do you see water in it versus just sort of wet soil?
Yeah, so typically there's usually water in it, I would say probably until like March, April timeframe, depending on how much snow we get. And then it dries out from there. But I do have a couple of photos. I don't know if you can see that as well.
Uh, Not yet. We're still seeing the plans, I think.
Oh, I may have just shared that, not the entire screen. Let me see here.
Just to chime in here on the wetland change areas map, is classified as a wetland swamp deciduous.
Hmm, okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't know if I can share the entire screen, but let me know if you can see that photo now.
Yep.
Okay, got it. So yeah, this was just me in Microsoft Paint, but just to show you an outline of what it will look like, the surveyor came and staked the garage and then added 10-foot offsets. Um, but yeah, the wetland area is back here off to the left, and that's the area that I mentioned is typically filled with water until like the March, April timeframe.
And is it so? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, how much impervious coverage are you adding? The outline of the red indicates that will all be part of the pad,
Yes, that's
correct?
correct. So the
And then,
garage is going to be larger than the shed, 24 feet wide by 22 feet deep.
and the driveway will come in and there will be, it'll have to turn into the, so how much are you adding on impervious coverage from the back of the truck, say where that line of the current driveway is, to allowing both of your cars to go into the doors, turning right? I mean, how much
Yeah,
drive are you adding?
a very small section, just enough to be able to pull a vehicle into the garage door that would essentially be on the left side of the garage here,
Okay,
because this will cover the existing area for the right garage door, so nothing will be needed to be added on that side.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can show, I'm not sure if the plans are actually being shown earlier, so let me share those because the slope of the roof is included on there. I know that was a question. It looks like uh, it has I don't know how I'm supposed to read this, but there's a triangle and there's 12 on the top and 6 on the side is the dimension, but I'll share it so you can see here. Uh, it's a bit small, but let me see if I can zoom in further or if you can view that as is. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's allowing me to zoom any further, but the area there, the slope looks like 12/6. I'm not sure if that's clear, Barbara, on what that would actually be.
Okay. Do you have gutters and downspouts on that?
They're not on the plans, but they can definitely be added if that would be a requirement. I do have gutters and downspouts on the house today at 23 Montrose.
The slope comes out to about 64 degrees.
Whoa.
Uh, is there any drainage within the garage? I know sometimes people um, will have a drain inside for water or spills or anything like that.
No, we didn't have any plans to put a drain in the garage itself. It's just going to be for storing two vehicles. Um, but there was nothing in the actual plans that I had discussed with my contractor about putting a drain within the garage itself.
Okay.
Let me just correct myself. 26 degrees. Doing the math wrong.
Got it. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, no, no problem. Trying to screw you all up. In the back of your yard, it slopes down towards the wetland.
It does, yeah, slightly.
I gotcha.
I I guess the thing, and maybe you mentioned this, but I was concentrating on something else, but when I look at your picture, aren't you going to have to extend the driveway to the edge of to the, I guess, edge of the garage that's closest to the wetland so that you can get into that second door?
Correct, yeah. I think Barbara had mentioned that as well. And yeah, the plan is to extend the garage enough to be able to drive a vehicle into the left garage door.
Okay. So I don't know if that's something you can add to your plan. Um, even if
So
it,
I guess you would want to see, let me see here.
Yeah, just
yeah,
because the project description it says no pavement is needed.
Where does it say that? It's on the,
WPA Form 1, Section B, project description continued. Should be page 2, should be the top. It says no pavement is needed. There is sufficient existing parking.
is that a document I would have had access to, or is that something my contractor would have submitted?
That must have been them. That was just the application submission that they did.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I don't think that was provided to me. Okay, so let me just share this back out.
If since we didn't see that at first, could you just sort of explain roughly where that extra pavement would be?
Yeah, so I guess can you see the plot plan now?
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this is where the shed is now. The proposed garage is what's outlined. But yeah, it would just be this kind of this section here, just enough to be able to pull that vehicle into the left side garage door.
Oh. Okay.
Do you have that photograph you had where you put the Microsoft red line on?
I do,
Might
yeah. Let
That
me
might be
share that out again.
easier for some of these people to see just where the driveway exists now and where, how much additional space it would be required.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it looks like there was that front stake too, like where it was staked out. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a 10-foot offset there, but this is the actual garage. It's tough to see, but there's a survey mark with a spray painted orange dot there. So the garage would come to here and then come over to this stake. Um, so yeah, it would essentially just be this section here. We would have to add a square so you'd be able to pull a vehicle into the garage on the left side.
So something like a 12 by 10, something of that nature.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's a 10-foot offset from the stake.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
yep.
what I'm eyeballing it.
And then the rest of the yard, is it just lawn right up to the wetland, like where you see the water?
Uh, yeah, so the lawn goes up to the kind of the weeded area here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, let me see if I have another photo. I don't think I have another one of the rest of the lawn, but I can probably pull up. We might be able to see it on like the Google Maps satellite.
It looks like that bit of weeds that you see there on the left was about the closest point of the, whether that's wetlands or not, that the wetland isn't any closer than that point there. So between the shed and the wetlands, it's all just grass lawn.
Correct, yeah.
I think I'd like to understand, get it quantified just how much impervious surface will be added, even if it's an approximate, like sort of extending that red line to the length of the garage, to the length of the driveway.
Yeah, so this is if you can see the two stakes here,
Mhm.
this is a 10-foot offset. So these two stakes are 10 feet apart.
Okay.
And then it would be obviously over to this existing section of pavement to essentially allow enough room to pull a vehicle in there. So yeah, I think Barbara, your estimate I think is probably correct. Probably like a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 12 section there. So there's enough room to pull a vehicle in.
Would anyone like to do a site visit?
Yeah, I don't think it ever hurts. Take a look, get a little bit more of a scope in our heads.
Just one thing I had sent around before was like usually with the RDAs, you need to provide a decision within 21 days of receiving the application. So making a site visit would put that beyond the 21 days.
So when did we receive this?
A week or two ago.
Okay, because it seems to me like we don't have a wetlands delineation. We're relying on just data in an part of town that has historically been altered, which may be fine, but it's good to check out. And the information provided mentioned no additional no additional pavement required. But Nick, who's the homeowner, is saying that's not quite accurate. Um, and then I think we'd want to get a depiction of sort of the extent on the plan of how much additional pervious area would be added to the existing driveway. So what is the easiest way to approach this, Ethan?
You could continue it. The risk there is it's open to being appealed if you don't meet that 21-day deadline. Otherwise, if you want to make a decision today, you could just either issue the negative determination to approve it or issue the positive to deny it. Usually you would just make a decision like based on the information provided. So if you feel that's not sufficient to make a negative determination, that might be positive. Yeah. So this isn't too different from what we typically receive from filings, but of course each site is unique.
Well, if something doesn't reflect the plan that's happening, why would we approve that? I'm just, and if we have no current, like what's the most recent delineation for this property? Nick, have you done any previous work to the house?
No, I moved in 2023.
Okay. Do you know if the previous homeowner did work?
I'm not sure. The husband who lived there had passed away, and the wife is now elderly. Um, I think she's like 104 years old, so she's moved into assisted living.
Good for her. Yeah, my only question is like if would the homeowner Nick get locked into uh not being able to have pavement put down because it says so in the WPA form?
They wouldn't be
Right.
locked into it. I can always add it on there as a note, but that's
Okay.
usually work like that. You couldn't be because it's so small, such a small area compared to the whole site. That's something that they could most likely just do on top of what's in the plan. So they wouldn't be locked into exactly what's on the plan. I can add a note in there to make it more clear, but it wouldn't be an issue either way.
I don't think we've ever seen like, when you do when we do a negative determination of applicability, kind of what that looks like with the amendments, because they're suddenly not enforceable. I haven't seen one so far where an applicant comes and says, like what's been submitted is not accurate. So in my mind, the logical thing would be to do the site visit, continue the hearing, and just appropriately document the work that's going to take place. I don't know how other people feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good option because even an appeal would be sort of time consuming to the point that I'm not sure an appeal would actually resolve it any faster than just doing that.
Okay, so I guess would I have to work with my contractor to have him update, I guess what was submitted because he left off the pavement section. That's the point of contention is the area that's planned to be paved and not currently, I guess, in the permitting request that he had submitted.
Yes. And and I think we just want to make sure, um, we agree with the distance to the wetlands,
Okay.
that we're comfortable with that 57 foot figure.
Yeah, so that was done based off of the GIS map for Wakefield. That's what they looked at. Um, but I looked at the map myself too, like where you can turn the overlays on for like the wetlands or conservation land. That's what the surveyor had used as the markings there.
Right. It's just an estimate. Sometimes we've found in the field that it can be a little bit different, or in some cases, wetlands aren't mapped. So,
Okay, got it. So the Wakefield GIS maps could be incorrect, is what you're saying. Okay. Um, I guess planning for a site visit, how would I go about doing that? Is that something that I would have to work with you, Ethan, to schedule, or?
Um, if that's what the commission's going to do, they should be able to pick a date and time now, just talking with each other. It sounds like they would like to see it individually themselves.
Okay.
um, so I don't know what people's schedules are, but like, does an evening towards the end of next week work? Like, what's your availability, Nicholas?
You can come by anytime.
Or like a Saturday,
Yeah. I'm away this week. I'm up in Maine, but I'm gonna be home on Friday, and I'll be available really anytime next week as well. Whatever works for you folks. This is a priority for me. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I can work with your schedules.
Do we have to go in pairs of two?
Well, now that we have James, we can go in pairs of three.
Uh,
Yeah, I won't be able to attend the site visit, so you all can sort of decide without, you know, being concerned about that.
Next week doesn't work for you?
I have a lot of travel and appointments coming
Oh,
up.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Is he back next week?
I guess the other thing to consider is if they're going to have them submit a new RDA, just considering the timelines of the deadlines and what meeting that would be on. You wouldn't be able to update the current RDA form. If you wanted to change it, it would have to be a new RDA altogether.
Are you sure about that?
Yep.
There's no way to add an attachment with a updated explanation or make.
He could like provide information like written or verbally, but you wouldn't be able to update the RDA form itself. Usually you would just kind of discuss it, like he's telling us now about the pavement. You wouldn't be able to document that on the RDA form, but you could make your decision based on the information. So if you wanted to see that written on the RDA form, you would want to make a determination on this one and then have him submit a new one altogether.
Well, I think either way, we want to do a site walk, right? And the next available time we're meeting is the first week in September, right? Or is that what's our next meeting, the 5th? Did you do a site visit?
The second. It's the
The
second.
second.
It's a Wednesday.
Ethan's been to my house before, but not for this. It was for a previous tree removal.
Okay.
Yeah, I had gone a few months ago with that tree removal, so I wasn't looking exactly at the wetlands. I saw pretty much what we see here in this picture.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm available after 6 o'clock on Tuesdays through Fridays. Saturdays I'm busy until 5, but I'm off Mondays. So the Friday would work for me as long as it was after 6:20-ish.
Okay. I'm not available this week,
Oh, okay.
but the following week would be better. Sorry. Or we could just, yeah.
Mondays I'm off, all day.
Ethan, are you planning on going?
I don't think so now.
Okay. I'll be back Monday, so I could come. Does anybody else want to come Monday evening? Nick, did you say you'd be around?
Yeah, so you're saying Monday
Like 6:30-ish?
the 24th or the 31st?
Yeah, 24th would be next week.
Yeah, 24th.
Okay, the 24th at sorry, was that 6:30?
Yep.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay. James, does that work for you or no?
Yeah, that should work for me.
Okay. So I guess why don't we plan on that? And if 4 of us are able to attend, then one of us can just, hang back and, we can stagger.
I can go during the day much better than I can do in the evening.
Okay.
I could always go with Barbara because I'm free all day.
Okay. So James, you and I go at 6:30?
Yeah, that
Perfect.
sounds good.
Okay, Drew, we're on.
Locked in.
Nick, it's a date, and so we're we're going to do a site visit at 6:30 on Monday, and Drew and Barbara can coordinate with you to just stop by earlier in the day. Or coordinate via Ethan. And then I think we should be able to wrap this up the next meeting. Just, want to feel comfortable with what we have.
Okay, sounds good.
Do you like to be called Nicholas or Nick?
I usually go by Nick, but either one is fine.
Is there a time that's preferable for you during the daylight hour, during the daytime, not daylight hours, although it's getting darker sooner? Yeah, that works better for you, lunch hour, not lunch hour? What works for you on a Monday?
So Monday I am available anytime from I could do 11 to 12 noon, or between 1 and 3 p.m.
11 and 12 sounds great to me. What about you, Drew? All
Sounds
right.
great. Sounds great.
So we
Lunch
have a
date.
date.
Mhm.
I'll bring the coffee.
All right.
All right, sounds
Thank
good.
you for taking us through that. That was really helpful.
Yeah, no problem. Is there anything, um, I'm gonna follow up with my contractor. Does he need to modify the document that you mentioned to accommodate for the pavement as well? Should I give him a heads up on that, or will that be after the site visit or?
I would think you could submit a clarification in an email, but with an updated drawing and keep it the same. What do you think, Ethan? But it would be helpful if you could stake out, you know, how far, I think you showed it in the pictures, but just making sure that really is going to be how far you extend your driveway.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that works.
Yeah, if you could just update the plan. Let me take a look at this form here for a second. If you could just update that plan to include that extra pavement, and then let me see if the form is here.
And can't they just like cross out the no additional pavement required or something?
It wouldn't be anything formal, but yeah, you could just, as a reference, cross it out if you'd like. But I'll make a note on the side. But I'm sure we'll remember for the next meeting. You wouldn't have to update the original form, just send along that updated plan, and then we can discuss it after the site visit at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. So you're saying have the plot plan updated to accommodate for the pavement and then send that along?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
And I guess you should get a copy of the form if you don't have it.
Yeah, I don't.
I
My
think,
con sorry, go ahead.
no, I think Ethan can forward it to you.
Yep. I can just forward that to you.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time. And so do we need a motion, Judy, to continue the meeting?
No, as long as the applicant agrees to it, that's all.
Is that okay, Nick?
Yeah, that's fine. We
Okay,
have our next steps in the site visits, and we're gonna update the plan. So I think that's good with me.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the time, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is DEP 313658 Ronnie Mendez 131 Montrose Avenue. Notice of intent, continue public hearing for the removal of an existing garage, construction of 20 by 40 feet addition and deck, and installation of an underground infiltration system within 100 feet of a wetland resource area.
This one was continued from the last meeting. I drafted the order of conditions with a few conditions on there. I'm just looking to have that issued today if that's all set to go.
Okay, so the applicant is not here, or his representative, Paul Finocchio. No. He seemed fine with the verbal conditions we talked about the last meeting, right?
Yep, I don't see him here today. He seemed fine with what we talked about.
Um, did anybody have comments?
No, the, conditions special to the project on the bottom there seems pretty straightforward to what we were saying about the invasive plants and the snow. Um, Arborvitae's, and I assume also including the rhododendron I know in person you mentioned the roadie would get moved over to the more towards the boundary before it slopes down underneath the pine trees, and then no offsite fill. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I do like all those.
Yeah. Can we just add the words rhododendron? I actually don't even remember if they had arborvitaes. It was the rhododendron, I remember.
Sure.
And
I could say both, or I could
Yeah.
just say the plants in general.
Yeah,
and if if you can't, then to add, it would be nice if they could add some vegetation there. So if those didn't work out.
Well, you could just say all the plants behind the existing garage,
Mhm.
because there was a row of them, and I saw the rhododendrons too, but I'm not sure I saw
Arborvitae.
arborvitae.
I didn't see and I don't know how well those would transplant.
they're not good at growing where they're originally planted.
Yes, exactly. But rhodies you can transplant.
I've tried to kill mine many times. No problem. Comes right back.
So, Ethan, so if you could just update that to
Yep.
rhododendron. And I guess if there's an issue with that, then I don't know how you would say this, equivalent replacement shrubs, I guess, for the ones removed. Just to add a little to the buffer area.
Also looking to add like
In the event
the
they can't,
additional plants if those don't
yes,
take, or what was
yes,
that?
yes, yes.
Okay, I'll add that as a separate condition.
Okay.
Would you specify or just say plant materials?
I'll say
Native shrubs.
large shrubs, medium native shrubs.
Yeah, medium to large native shrubs.
In the event that those do not get transplanted.
Mhm. And there's no one from the public here. Okay. I guess technically before we vote on issuing the order of conditions, we just want to make sure that there's no members of the public that want to speak. I don't see anyone. And I did check the mailbox to just make sure nobody sent comments on any of these matters this evening. So can I get a motion to approve the order of conditions for 131 Montrose Avenue as amended?
You need to close the public hearing first.
Thank you, Judy.
Yep.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
So moved. I'm going to do roll call. James,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
and I vote yes too. Judy, thank you for keeping me on track. Can I now get a motion to approve the order of conditions as amended during the meeting?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the order of conditions at 131 Montrose Ave as amended, including today's comments, August 18th, 2026.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll do another vote. James, actually, Judy, actually, did you watch this hearing, James? I might skip over you.
This was the previous
Yes,
meeting? I did.
oh, you did.
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Judy,
I don't think he should vote on it because
Okay.
you really should sign that you've watched the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. Okay. Barbara,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you, everyone. So they have their order of conditions. The next item on the agenda is 8 p.m. DEP 313652 Pack Self-Storage of Wakefield LLC, 50 Quantapowhat Parkway. This matter has been continued to 9/2 at the applicant's request. Judy, is it possible for us to just ask what the status is? Is it still with ZBA or?
No, they're working on stormwater with the engineering department.
Okay. Thank you. And then does it have to go back to the ZBA before it comes to us? Or is it?
I don't think they've closed out with ZBA yet.
Okay. It's helpful. Thank you. So now we can move on to other business. The wetland bylaw discussion. Can I turn it over to you, Jennifer?
Yep. Okay. So an update, Eleanor and I and Bill Renault in engineering, and Ethan met a couple of Fridays ago to go over sort of outstanding comments from Bill and Ethan in particular that hadn't been addressed yet. Discussed questions that, Eleanor and I still had about understanding concerns. And then afterward, Eleanor and I discussed, and drafted some changes, to the bylaw. We, I think, as discussed in our previous meeting, want to go into the next presentations to upcoming boards and FOLQ with what we sort of want the bylaw to look like. We want it to be current, what we present to people, not say, oh, here's what it says now, but we're going to change it. I think what I'd like to do is go through certain kind of topics or proposed changes that I think are the more significant ones here. If people have any concerns, like if someone has an issue and says, I don't like this change, or we need to discuss this more, I think that's what I'd like to hear, and then also hear from folks about just any other concerns they have about, or comments, etc., they have about the bylaw draft. Does that sound like an okay plan? Okay. All right, let me share. I'm gonna put the bylaw up on the screen and try to scroll, and also I'll be looking at the table as a guide for myself. So I highlighted in green the things that I wanted to specifically just run past folks and see if there were concerns about. Okay. Oh, and I said in the email that the big changes from the previous draft were, we got a lot of feedback from Bill about not wanting, him suggesting that we not have the buffer areas be resource areas. There was a lot of back and forth, and we ultimately propose anyway to adopt that change. So that's one change, taking out ponding area. I'll go through these kind of one by one, but so the jurisdiction section has been edited to essentially include Part A, which is the resource areas, and then Part B, which are the buffer areas, which are not going to be called resource areas, but will be called jurisdictional areas, to indicate that the commission has the authority to regulate activities within these areas. And I think one of Bill's main concerns was that, um, one, people wouldn't sort of like to hear that, their buffer area on their property be called a resource area. And, I think he thought this, was more kind of similar to the approach of the WPA. Any questions, concerns about that change?
Yeah, I would, oh, go on, sorry.
I was just going to ask about like what activities are being regulated in that area. Is that something that's written here?
So we use the term for B, no person shall alter or perform work within the following buffer area. So
Hmm.
that brings us to the definition of alter.
Yeah. So does that just include like any work? Because I know like with the WPA, they don't regulate the buffers, they regulate like activities in the buffers, and then they have kind of like what you have here, and then they have a stipulation that with that like there are exemptions for
Right.
work that can be
Yeah.
done, or even like work that's minor enough that it doesn't even like trigger the extensions. You just want to make sure that that sort of small work is not also regulated.
Well, I mean, I can take out this. So the or perform work is sort of an unofficial term here. So, I mean, we could take that out and just leave it as alter, which has a definition.
You could do that, yeah. I'd recommend sort of doing almost taking word for word what the WPA says, where they're not like the buffer is not jurisdictional, but the activity in the buffer is. So you're not just getting a blanket jurisdiction and then kind of narrowing it down from there. You're kind of giving the people the fact that you don't have the buffer until there's the work being done.
Okay.
Honestly, of all the changes, I think this is the one that for me is the hardest because the standard language of the majority of local bylaws just, says we regulate these and the work within 100 feet of the resource areas. So I do hesitate to make things identical to the Wetlands Protection Act because then the bylaw really has no legs, right? So I think we ultimately want to consult with an attorney, particularly Tom Mullen, to make sure this language is defensible. Jennifer, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the other towns that Bill had referenced, but
No.
yeah. I mean, that's something, Ethan, that would be really helpful to get us more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I know Burlington had it. I like the way they wrote it. It was very similar to the WPA because the WPA says like they don't just name the buffer as jurisdictional. They just say, this work within these buffers is jurisdictional or is regulated. So it's more of a concept of how you want to approach it. I think it both accomplishes the same goal, just down to what type of consistency you want.
do you think you could send that to us or suggest edits like in a version with
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on just like making a smaller version of the first few pages, just like in the format of the WPA. I just wanted to see if we could walk down the concepts before that went too far along. But like the WPA itself has a good reference, and then like the Burlington bylaw is good too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking back to previous hearings on big projects where we, heard the applicants say, the buffer zone has no performance standards, so you can't, enforce this requirement or whatever. I think we want to make sure we don't open up ourselves to something like that.
If it's jurisdictional, it sounds like it would have teeth. It's all about what's legal
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
permissible and not
Yeah.
permissible.
Yeah, that would come from more of like the performance standards. So if it's jurisdictional, it gives you the ability to say you can't do this work, but
Right.
having like a performance standard is where that's where the backup comes from. Is what has the standing. So
Yeah,
kind of
that's
like what Bill was suggesting. Like if you did make the buffer a resource, you would need a performance standard because that's what gives it that weight.
Right, which we do have a performance standard for the buffer,
Okay.
as well as exemptions. That's the 25-foot no disturb, as well as, making it clear that, people can expect that, perhaps with some conditions, they're going to be able to do work in the 25 to 100-foot range. But I've made a note about this, but this is one of the biggest changes. And I took notes on those comments. Okay, anything else on this? But I mean, I do think, right, so the WPA takes the approach of it's the combination of the jurisdictional area, the interest, and the activities coming together to provide the, basis for regulating. Okay. Let's see.
Thank you for your chart, by the way, or your graph, or whatever you call it. It was very helpful. I was able to get through the whole thing, which is pretty long.
Oh.
And but it really helped to sort of separate out the parts and pieces to look at. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, you're welcome. Okay, I'm still scrolling through my table to look for the next thing to talk about. Eleanor and I had discussed spending more time on administrative review, but which is spelled out in the regulations currently. And they're essentially very minimally, this administrative review concept is just referred to in the bylaw, but all the details are in the regulations, which means that, the regulations can be updated by the commission by holding a public hearing that it gives notice about. So that gives the commission some latitude to make changes, which I thought was important because this is a sort of a concept that not that many places use. So I feel like we need to be flexible about it. Having said that, potentially we could, we've gotten the feedback that we should go into the town meeting with our regulations drafted. Having said that, they can be changed outside of town meeting. So I do think we could put off this discussion to like a future meeting without it having any impact on, the time course of the bylaw itself. I don't know, do people have because I think this is like a pretty large discussion on its own, administrative review.
So is just administrative review, the concept would be essentially getting permission from the commission to do some kind of work. It's minimal or the bylaw doesn't apply and we give it in writing. Like it's given in writing, sort of like
Right,
tree removal.
yeah. So administrative review spells out certain scenarios that would qualify for the conservation agent to sort of make decisions under certain circumstances about work that people may approach the commission with. And essentially the big conditions are if they're not doing anything that would destroy vegetation and they're not doing anything that would affect stormwater like regrading or changing in pervious to impervious, then those scenarios would qualify for administrative review, some distance from the wetland. It essentially just sort of formalizes some ways to sort of expedite certain low-risk projects.
So I guess, yeah.
While also the way it's written in the regulations also describes sort of what that process is and how it's documented.
Mhm.
It's not something that I think is widely put into writing. The example I have, I want to say is from Arlington, is the basis for this.
And do they have examples of what types of projects are subject to administrative review?
I think I'd have to go back and check, but I think it is that a project that is a certain distance from the wetland doesn't destroy vegetation, doesn't affect drainage or stormwater, which would be relatively few, I think. That's how it's written currently. But I think we also had some discussion about do we want to expand that and add to administrative review certain things like approaches towards trees, etc. Okay, so these are the regulations.
Sorry, going back to that, is the tree removal policy we have, is that considered administrative review? Like-
Administrative review currently, as it's written about, doesn't say anything about tree removal, the tree removal policy, no.
Okay.
I mean, except that it involves destruction of vegetation. But no, it doesn't. Um, right, and since this doesn't, I think affect the timeline of the bylaw itself, you know, it's something, we could also just put it to the end of today and see how we're doing on time.
I think this was one that Bill, Ethan, do you remember? I thought he wasn't crazy about the administrative review.
Um, I don't recall that. I think he was fine with it. You just need to like make it clear what can and can't be done under the administrative review.
Okay.
It would mostly be for things that probably don't reach the level of an RDA, where a homeowner would still want the assurance that they're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think, yeah, there's a couple of places where we do say that we will allow things under administrative review, but they're not currently in there. So there is a need to spend more time on administrative review, but possibly not tonight because it's a regulation matter. Okay, so I'm scrolling ahead to fees.
And what
Yeah.
about just something more generic in the bylaw saying something, sorry, I don't want to dwell on this too long, but an approach is the commission reserves the right to so, to categor to basically categorize some minor projects to administrative review in order to give homeowners assurances that they have permission, something like that, and to be expounded on in the regulations or something like that can be updated from time to time. Something.
Yeah, something like a new form or something like that. Like a new,
Yeah, if we can think of a way to address it, that just kind of gives us a window to use the regs to alleviate, burdensome projects that are actually, a good thing or have no impact. Sorry, from filling out burdensome forms and all of that.
okay. Okay. So the next big change was to fees. One, they were moved to later in the bylaw. Two, the proposed $100 RDA fee was taken out. Same with fees for certificates of compliance. So those things currently don't cost anything under the WPA, and so they will continue to not cost anything based on this proposed revision. And so the idea here was that I initially put these kind of small fees in. They wouldn't over the course of a year generate a lot of income for the commission, but would be consistent with sort of the town's request that to essentially do things to sort of raise additional funds. But it does create an additional burden for people who want to do work on their house. So that was the feedback that we received. So I took them out. My thought process was it's not a big, this isn't intended to be a big um, funds generator. And so why risk having it sort of caught up or, on that issue, which it's not really the purpose of the bylaw anyway. But how do you all feel about that?
I'm fine.
Okay. Okay. One thing that I did have a question about, and this may be a question for Ethan, which is, so our language here, waiver non-applicability of fees, no application or consultant fee shall be due from the town of Wakefield. I'd have to go back and see where this language came from, but does that seem correct that there's not a circumstance in which we would ask Wakefield, the town of Wakefield, to pay for a consultant or an expert?
Yeah, that sounds like how it's done now. I can't speak on the language itself, but yeah, that's how it's done under the WPA currently.
Yeah.
That's the WPA standard, okay. 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 All right, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, section 7. I wanted to put under mitigation, I wanted to add this sentence. The commission may authorize or require replication or replacement of buffer area to mitigate impacts to resource area values. And that's because I didn't see that specifically stated anywhere. I think typically mitigation is most clearly discussed in terms of, replication is most clearly discussed in terms of the resource area themselves, replicating wetlands. But I think a lot of what we encourage people to do is to mitigate or replace, buffer area that they damage or, destroy. It might be good to add here notwithstanding exemptions, because I don't think this is intended to override exemptions. So work outside of, this would primarily be, for work in the 25-foot, no disturb to the extent that any is allowed. Without requiring like mitigation replication of like the 25 to 100 foot.
Would the replication, so say it's the buffer zone includes, just a regular old like bluegrass lawn, would it require like a replication up to just whatever it was before, or does it require like additional native species, landscaping, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the way that it's worded, may means that it's at the discretion of the commission, but it does focus on mitigating impacts to the resource area values, which are things like drainage. So, really, I think the primary value that like a bluegrass lawn would provide would be, I think, drainage. So that's what we'd expect them to be mitigating.
Yeah, okay.
And it might be good to add language, you know, notwithstanding exemptions.
Yeah,
Or-
I
Go ahead.
could you add that in? I was looking at that. I think something like the commission may authorize or require replication of wetlands. Do you want to say wetlands or resource areas? Because, right, you have to replicate floodplain anyway, like
Mhm.
bordering land subject to flooding.
Okay, resource areas.
Yeah. So, right. And you can come back to it. You can just make a suggestion. It's a form of, and you could add as a form of mitigation, notwithstanding um, uh, exemptions outlined in the bylaw, and then continue on. Or just do a new sentence at the end, something like,
Do we need to
Right.
state that here, or is it stated?
actually, maybe you don't even need to say it because mitigation, it's
Yeah.
damaging a resource area, and the exemption section makes clear that, you know, there's grandfathering, like lawn or whatever, if you already encroached on a 25-foot notice
Yeah.
or. So it could
Yeah,
be,
I also wonder if this needs to be sort of specific to the 25-foot no disturb.
I think that's fine, because the may, yeah, we may, or we may not. Because you're grandfathered. On the other hand, if you're going to create a lot more impervious area in your yard, we may want you to, you know, plant a rain garden somewhere, you know, something like that to kind of mitigate that, as you mentioned. So I think the language you have is fine.
We can always, you know, kind of seek out more, you know, opinion on this from maybe Tom Nolan, or just kind of comments between now and when this goes in. Okay. All right. Okay, the next big change was, yeah, one of the biggest changes was removing ponding area. This was also something that, you know, we had a lot of feedback from Bill about. The ponding area didn't have a threshold. It was the purpose of the ponding area was essentially to let people know that they shouldn't be discharging their stormwater off of their property onto their neighbor's property. You know, from our discussion with Bill and then Eleanor and I talking more, so protecting isolated wetlands that are 1,000 square feet in size or larger provides some of that protection. What I understood from our conversation with Bill was that it actually is already against the town bylaws to discharge your stormwater onto your neighbor's property. The challenge with that has been having a process in place that actually provides the process for regulating that. But the stormwater, well, one, I think, you know, Bill said that, you know, the building inspector can be notified if someone experiences that from their neighbor, the building inspector can be notified to address it. And I think the stormwater bylaw provides some protection against that. So I think those three things, the protection of isolated wetlands 1,000 square feet or larger, the law on the books and reporting to the building inspector and the stormwater bylaw all kind of cover that territory so that we can take out this ponding area, which may be a sticking point because it doesn't have a threshold on it.
I agree in all my years in different towns. There are laws on the books that protect neighbors from throwing, people from directing water onto their neighbor's property. And that's usually the first line of defense. And it's pretty sticky.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any more discussion about that?
I mean, I have seen, like, for example, in our earlier hearing, while the work was going to take place, a good distance away from the wetland, I have seen contractors, not use erosion controls, not near wetland, but just in my neighborhood and just seeing, you know, piles of basically dirt, just washing down the street, hundreds, like 100 feet away and then into the storm drain, things like that. So I don't know to what extent the building inspector is able to catch that kind of thing, or Ethan, is he making sure, like, even if it's a good distance away, that piles of fill or whatever are kind of contained on the property?
Yeah, usually that would be like with the building permit. So if
Okay,
someone's not like following the permit, that's when they would, they have the power to make them follow the permit. But it's similar to what we deal with, where you don't always see every house in town like until it's brought to you. So like I assume once they're notified of it, they can look into it and take the action that they need to.
okay.
Yeah, so some of it does seem like it's subject to like enforcement after the fact, after there's a problem. I mean, I do agree. I've heard of people with this problem, so I do think it happens a lot. Okay. Okay, the next change was to move the vernal pool language out of the some of the vernal pool language out of the definitions and into section 7, significance and presumptions. The language is the same, it's just been moved to a different place. So it's pasted here now. There's the presumption of the vernal pool habitat, the guidelines for determining whether an area is a vernal pool habitat, and then the presumption can be overcome. It's just cut and paste. But also,
Ethan, do you think this makes more sense? We were thinking it align more with performance standards to be there.
Don't recall. I think is this similar to what Bill was recommending?
I don't think Bill had an opinion on this.
It's still tricky where there's too many words that are just like up for like discussion, where you say like credible evidence, for example, like unless you define it, it's sort of just putting it in the hands of the commission. I think applicants would want a little more protection to make sure like there is a route to overcome the presumption. Almost like a standard that the same way that you can prove there is a vernal pool, you'd want to be able to prove that there's not a vernal pool, like with certainty.
So I spoke with Matt Byrne, who serves as a kind of a vernal pool expert for a lot of projects. He felt that it wasn't possible to sort of definitively prove that something's not a vernal pool, but he thought certain best practices like assessments in, late winter, early spring were the best way to make that determination. So that was his recommendation. Um, and in fact, we don't even require that. That was a request, I think, by Bill to have kind of off-season vernal pool determinations. We don't say anything about that one way or another, but that is Matt's recommendation as a vernal pool expert, and probably what a lot of kind of experts' recommendation would be, who might actually be in a position to be evaluating a potential vernal pool.
You're saying that it
Yes.
should be during the early spring, late winter?
Yeah. But we don't specifically require that in the bylaw.
In your table, it says that Bill mentions wanting winter delineation. Is that what you're all talking about when you say winter? When he says winter?
Yeah. Yeah, Bill, I think, would like us to explicitly allow winter delineations, or he just wanted there to be like a path to a winter delineation, and we don't prohibit that. So we're not saying you can't do that, but if someone retains an expert who is truly an expert, they're probably going to say the delineation needs to be done actually in spring. Bill's saying he wants sort of an off season. That's the part of that's the
Yeah.
gist of his feedback.
It's
Yeah, I
kind
think
of.
his
Go.
concern is like if you apply for a permit, in the winter, you just have to wait till the spring to even have an answer. I mean, what you have written here is definitely like ideal for protecting the vernal pool. His thought was more on the other side of the applicant. Like, how do you move this forward without waiting for a professional or without waiting for the 6 months till you can find the evidence?
Yeah.
And there's not going to be like an easy answer to that one either.
No.
Yeah.
But I
I
don't
mean,
think, sorry, go on.
Well, I mean, I think, currently the Wetlands Protection Act protects vernal pools when they fall within the um, sort of buffer area of another type of wetland and when they're certified. But I think that idea that only vernal pools that get certified get protected leads to, I think, a sort of biased application of what the law is intending to do. It's intending to protect vernal pools, but it only ends up protecting them when the person cares to protect them and therefore gets them certified, while allowing people who don't care, don't get them certified, to not follow, this law that's intended to protect them. And so that's a big part of the purpose of the bylaw, is to extend protections really to all vernal pools, whether they've been certified yet or not. Meaning it's not sort of entirely at the discretion of the property owner and whether they decided to have their vernal pool certified.
I think most of the vernal pools in Wakefield have already been mapped as potential vernal pool locations. And, these aren't things that your homeowner is going to encounter in their backyard, right? They're not in the middle of lawns. You need trees that provide shade, there are all these characteristics. So I think it's, I honestly think it's a non-issue. There just aren't that many, there aren't that many places that would impact a homeowner.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, but we could do a field visit. That might be helpful, and see what a unaltered vernal pool habitat looks like, and then what an altered vernal pool habitat looks like. And that might be useful. Anyway,
Yeah, I'll go on to the next. Okay, performance standards 7E, the section on performance standards. I just wanted to confirm that, so we have this language, the performance standard for the wetland resource areas. This is our standard language, shall not be filled, dredged, or built upon, except as exempted by the bylaw or as exempted by 310 CMR, which is the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. So I think looking at this, I think what this or 310 CMR is doing is saying that if the Wetlands Protection Act exempts an activity, then we will as well. And I just want to make sure that that's what people want. I mean, these would be resources that are co-regulated under the bylaw and the WPA. So we have made an effort to mirror the exemptions in the bylaw to the WPA we haven't copy pasted the language, but they're basically comparable. But this essentially like makes it really comparable.
Seems pretty tight to me.
Okay, in a good way. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, I think that was our overall intention. I just want to be sure because that definitely makes it the case.
I think we're looking for the most succinct document we can find. It's very clear to people when they don't have to read too much or bury themselves too far into the weeds to understand the implications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think that gets, go ahead.
I guess I'm still like, maybe I can circle back.
Okay.
Will prevent a negative impact to the resource areas or as exempted by this bylaw or 310 CMR. But typically we don't exempt things that would have a negative impact to the resource areas, right? I'm just trying to think through that because even if you're grandfathered in, you would still have to meet some kind of performance standards, right? Like you have, I don't know, a water line that goes, or some sort of sewage line that goes through the edge of a wetland or vernal pool habitat, right? It's existing. We still have the, replace but make no larger, there's still performance standards to doing that work. It's not like you get to tear up the whole, like make a mess of things so I guess that's where I'd want to it's succinct, but I think it also kind of may not be accurate. Maybe just highlight it and we just take a closer look at that. Yeah, like I'd be more comfortable with the as exempted by this bylaw, but maybe not, or 310 CMR 10, something like that. Yeah, does anybody else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. Because with the bylaw, you want to be more strict. 310 CMR would still apply to a site, but you would want the bylaw to be on top of that. So you wouldn't want to, if you're adding exemptions, you'd want the ones from the bylaw to be like first above the WPA. So I think you would just want to say or as exempted by this bylaw and then end the sentence there.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Guess I don't know 310 CMR well enough.
Well,
I- I'm-
yeah,
Mhm.
it's a lot to think through, but I think this does fall back. This causes this to fall back primarily on our bylaw exemptions, which are they're certainly not less strict than the WPA.
No, I would just be careful about having two different I think people could just misinterpret that. And again, I'm gonna go back and pull that up. I can't think of something where it's just exempted, like it would have to fit that minor exemption, but even, let's pull up that language again. Move on and we can come back to it. I'll try to find that.
Okay, so those are all of the comments that I flagged as wanting to review. And does anyone else have, comments, things they want to discuss? So I'll assume that we've kind of made either made changes or I've taken notes on certain things that we'll come back to. But if people don't have an issue, then I'll leave them as is. But I have taken notes on our discussion today. Any other issues that people want to talk about with this draft of the bylaw? I think we'll probably, as a commission, maybe have one more discussion about changes before it goes in, 1 to 2 in a couple months after the upcoming presentations.
Can you go back to the definitions? I think we talked about, I just missed it when you went through it. Are those ones that you're keeping in, like the ones that are similar to the WPA? I know Bill mentioned only including them when they make a substantial change. Are you just going to keep these in? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, anything that's currently in, I think we want to keep in. Yeah. There's
And
some
then,
explanation
sorry.
for that in the tables, with person is a little bit more specific, including kind of this, municipality.
Trust.
What's that?
Trust, estate, and LLC, like,
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's see. Here, I think with isolated wetland, we have a size threshold. We have a delineation method that we selected, which is that it's based on hydric soils, not based on vegetation. Um,
That going to be 1,000 square feet? Bill recommended cubic feet, or kind of going back and forth between that.
I mean, the other towns I see are using square feet.
Is it easier in general to do square feet than cubic feet?
It is because you can get an estimate of it without concern for like what time of year it is or how deep is the water, without having to like get out there in the middle of it, to, measure depth. I just think it's easier to determine whether it should fall under the commission's review compared to something that depends on a depth measurement.
Yeah, the cubic feet would just be the square feet measurement plus the depth. So
Right.
it's kind of saving that step that's not as obvious.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think square feet is probably all that's necessary. I was just asking if there had to be more definitive, more specific, which in case you would want to do the cubic, but for general purposes, measuring the diameter, figuring out just where it is, how much it takes up, probably would also help you decide how deep it is.
Yeah, you might want a depth usually just so you're making sure it's not half an inch depth, making sure it's substantial, but like once you add a depth, that just becomes cubic feet. So I think a depth would be preferred if you want like a more accurate measurement of a wetland, especially if the benefit is holding water. A square feet would be a lot easier just to see on the surface.
well, The only other drawback with cubic feet is, for example, we've been in drought circumstances, right? So if we're allowing people to delineate and do determinations all year round, you're not everybody would come to us like in the summertime, I don't know, to say, oh, I don't have a foot of water in here. It's 1,000 square feet, but you know what I mean? And most of these smaller wetlands are dry or quite dry in the summer.
Just out of curiosity, do we have an idea about how much of Wakefield this would affect? Like how many more plots of lands would be affected by this bylaw with this isolated wetlands provision in it?
So, we have some idea from, like Mass GIS gives us an idea that's for wetlands that have been delineated for previous projects, but Mass GIS is also not comprehensive because if a wetland's never been delineated, it wouldn't be in Mass GIS, but it might exist in real life. We do have an idea about because Massachusetts has done a survey about estimating kind of the presence of potential vernal pools. We have an estimate and we do actually have a list. I'd have to do a little looking around for it, but I do have a list of the potential, certified vernal pools and potential vernal pools in Wakefield. It's around, I want to say it's around 2 dozen, give or take. A lot of them are in areas that are currently not developed for a reason, like town forest, or it's on the edge of a golf course, or it's in a somewhat protected area, like in the Reedy Meadow area. As Eleanor said, not in people's backyards. Um, Other than that, I think, I mean, so, what the commission and the conservation department, I think, encourages people to do is, not look for a wetland on a map, but just if they have a wet area of their property, to just touch base with the department. You don't even have to if you're unsure, you don't even have to like start filing forms, but just, reach out to Ethan, you know, get an impression. Is this
Sure.
going to be a concern?
Yeah, one of the minimum 1,000 square feet is good for the isolated wetlands, but one of the difficulties we talked about was even if it's less than 1,000 square feet, you'd still have to, do the work to identify how big it is. Because if it's less than 1,000, it wouldn't be jurisdictional, but you can't really see that without doing work. So like that was something Bill had mentioned, especially with the work he does along the roads. You'd be kind of going across a couple properties at times into places that it sometimes is just too difficult to do the survey for certain projects. So that was something we talked about a lot, but removing the ponding area plays a good part in making it easier for the homeowners. It's more so just kind of the question that you asked is what we're asking too is like, how do you know this affects you and how many people will it affect? And then the stricter standards are also something that you have to try to get across to people that you might have new jurisdictional areas or you might have the same jurisdiction, just like with stricter standards.
Again, to reiterate Jennifer's point, most of these are in undeveloped areas. Think of, sort of undulating landscapes with trees. I think we could do away with a threshold, but essentially that, the definition of an isolated wetland is a ponding area. And we're just giving it a threshold. I think people's yards have been grandfathered essentially, or in a developed area where you might have something that could look like that, it's typically a stormwater BMP, right, which has to be maintained anyway. So I think this is going to be pretty unusual.
I think the challenge will just come from like not knowing if it's jurisdictional, even if you're whether gaining the new jurisdiction or if you're close to it. You'll see a lot of times that there's just not always a clear answer until someone's coming in front of the commission.
But
But
we do
the
have,
bylaw has been simplified, especially recently, to resolve some of that.
yeah, and we do have the RDA process, which doesn't have a fee and is faster. And I mean, honestly, I think we review things even without making people do an RDA. So yeah, I definitely think we don't want to unnecessarily, burden people while still providing this increased protection. And it's hard to know how many vernal pools have already been just destroyed by the development that's happened in town over the years. Okay, other comments or questions people have about this draft?
I think it looks good.
Okay. So the next presentation is going to be in 2 days, actually, at the ESC, Environmental Sustainability Committee. I have to check whether we've gotten confirmation from the planning board.
Yeah, they said they can. I was going to ask you guys today if you're confirmed to go ahead with that one. But yeah, talking to the planner, they can put it on the agenda for the 8th.
Can we do
Okay.
it? Oh, do you want to do the 8th or the 18th? I feel like we need a little more time, but up to you.
September 18th.
Yeah.
I'm fine with either.
Is that one of the dates they had a meeting? I'll have to check.
Oh, maybe yeah, blanking on it.
Because if there'd be like every 2 weeks, so the next one, if the 8th is correct, the next one would be the 22nd.
Okay, and we would have a meeting about 10 days after that, early October.
Yeah, I think one thing to consider is if you want to like receive comments from them and then have the time to address it, then go back in front of the same boards again. Or if you're just going in front of them once, they won't exactly have the opportunity to see comments addressed. And I think ideally you'd go in front of each board twice. I'm not sure you have the time to do that with each of these boards though.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is that Jennifer and I work for a living. So we did reach out to Paul reached out to Dee to see if we could hold like a town, a separate meeting because for the general public, but I don't know that we can go back to each board twice kind of thing. Planning board, that's important because they need to be comfortable. But we can see how it goes.
Yeah, I guess just see if you want to. You can just see how it goes, or you can kind of let them know up front. That's more of like, we're presenting you the final version of the bylaw rather than having them like take the time to comment on it.
Okay.
Or you can always just take their comments, edit the bylaw based on it. They just won't be able to see it after that until the town meeting.
Are you going to go before the ZBA or town council?
We're tentatively on the ZBA agenda for 9/9. I'm waiting for confirmation, but that's a tentative yes. Town council, I haven't reached out to, but we have gotten that suggestion, so we probably should go ahead and line that up.
Judy,
Um,
do you know when the deadline is for to refer warrant articles to the town council?
They haven't said it yet.
Okay.
I think if you want to go in front of the council, you'll want to do that as soon as possible, and then they'll need a little bit of a notice. So I think if you could set it, or we could request a time, like if we set one today, request it in advance, as soon as we can. That might be the best thing for us.
Okay.
I know they have a meeting on, I think, September 28th, and there must be one on September 14th as well. So if one of those dates worked for you guys, I could start to get that set up.
And I guess we would need some final comments from Bill. I think we've tried our best to address his comments, but if there's anything glaring we've missed.
Yeah, I think maybe thinking about it now, you might want to go in front of those boards and then the council, and then get it back to Bill with a final version. But or you might just do whoever's available first. But I'm sure Bill would like a chance to at least review one like final version, whether or not he gives comments. But I think he'd like a chance to look at it.
Okay.
Were you planning to go to advisory board of public works?
We had talked about it, but I guess I'm trying, again, we're kind of limited on time. It would be nice, but it's yeah, how feasible?
Okay, so if we have these presentations happening between now and let's say September 9th, we get feedback from ESC, Planning Board, ZBA. We meet on the 15th. We can address comments from those boards in the draft. So if we meet, if we present to town council on the 14th, then we can, that's a real tight turnaround, but potentially address comments on the 15th in our meeting. If we wait till the 28th, I think we risk running out of time to address comments
Yeah.
from town council.
Yeah, I think so that sounds like a good plan. Just get it there as soon as you can. I'll have to reach out and see if that meeting would work for them. You just wouldn't have much time to meet like as a commission until the end of those. You might have a lot of comments set aside. That's kind of what you're going there for.
To town council?
Like if you meet,
Oh,
you said planning board, ZBA, and town council, we wouldn't have a commission meeting until after all three of those. So you would just have to do like three of those kind of back to back before you had a chance to all come together and talk about it.
I think it's helpful if people watch them. We're allowed to attend other meetings and watch them. We, attend them. We just can't deliberate amongst each other during the meeting. So anybody should go to these meetings with other boards just to hear what questions are asked. In my experience watching these sort of technical discussions, like Bill doing stormwater bylaw or the planning board doing the 3A initiative. Some of the discussions get really technical, and there's only a handful of people that are going to ask those technical questions, and they'll typically follow up with us. So I think it's really getting people comfortable with the message of the bylaw, and this is a change, and we're, one of the last communities to do it, and here's why we're doing it. And here are the concerns we've tried to address. But I think that's where I would try to go with it, as opposed to trying to explain every technical nuance. I mean, we've certainly been working with Bill over the last year and change.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think you'll just want to go into those meetings, sort of preparing those boards that might not, have their comments incorporated, or it might not have another chance to see it, just given the time constraint.
Okay.
Okay, so do I understand right? We will try to get on the town council agenda on the 14th, September 14th.
Yep.
Okay. We do have a presentation scheduled with FLLQ.
Is that the same night as the planning board?
Yes.
Will those conflict with each other, or are those separate times?
Probably conflict. I'm just answering that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they started like an hour sooner.
It's pretty
Or not.
tight. So I think what we want to do is try to request to be first on the FLLQ agenda and later on planning board.
Yep, I can ask for that. I know their meetings can be short sometimes, so not sure if they could do the request or if that's enough time, but I can ask and see how those times might line up with each other.
Yeah, we can also just divide, different people, different presentations.
Are we in a position where we could also update our 2-page info sheet that Jennifer had done? I know you didn't want.
Yes,
Okay.
I had just sent those last edits to Jen. There's 2 from the last meeting, so
And we removed ponding area.
yeah, removing the ponding area. Actually, I'll make sure it's in line with the edits we made today, but I think
Okay.
removing the buffer from the ponding area, but I'll also make sure that's removed altogether, and then just making it more clear which resources had the 25-foot setback.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I think for one of the comments was to remove the setback from the ponding areas, if I recall. But if the ponding area is taken out altogether, I'll just take a glance through it to make sure it reflects the current bylaw.
Yeah, and I can't remember the precise issue, but the other potential issue is that an isolated wetland only has a 25-foot buffer. So we definitely shouldn't say that everything has a 100-foot buffer. That might have been the issue. It might have been one of the other things.
Yeah.
I think we need a FAQ that's really simple. I don't know if somebody else wants to take a stab at writing it, but along the lines, like we sort of hear these, fears, you're gonna have to fill 2 separate two separate applications. The buffer is additive, that type of thing.
probably more than I can do at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Given my couple of weeks I have coming up.
I can put that together. I just need, I guess, the question, just
Some
send some
idea.
questions that you have. If any of you just have like one or two, I'll add those on to what I can think of, and then yeah, answer them.
Yeah, I
That way
think
you have something, and it would be good to like get those questions
yeah.
from the boards, but with the time, I think we'll have to just brainstorm those ourselves and then just have an answer so we can provide that in advance as well.
I think we've heard some of these questions before,
Yeah.
and we can just be explicit. And even, I'm thinking of the homeowner who had reached out, who was like, oh, I want to put a playground, I want to put a swing set and I have a wetland nearby, can I, and so like, I think you get a lot of these questions. So, I can send you the two I can think of, and then you can kind of go from there. It's, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just about making things better and not worse. And then I'm not sure if we'd have the time, but something that Jennifer and I had sort of brainstormed about was actually for some of these boards, maybe, and we'd have to figure out how to do this with Tom Mullen, just doing a almost like a training session or an info session, like this is what a vernal pool, here's an example of a vernal pool, here's an isolated wetlands. And there are a couple places in Wakefield where it would be pretty easy to do that. Here's what it looks like in its natural state, so you know what it is in the field. When I hear other boards talk about it, I think they're a little uncertain, and I don't know how people feel about that, but
Yeah, does that mean if it goes into effect, we would do like an info session?
maybe before. I mean, I think some people think, oh my God, everybody's gonna have a vernal pool in their backyard, and it's just not the case.
I think the bigger concern people might have is how will it impact me if I want to put an addition on an ADU where people aren't selling their smaller homes as much. It's going back to additions. And I think that's going to be a much greater concern.
Yeah. And I think Jennifer kind of addressed that in some of the examples she did at the last presentation, but that's really a good point, Judy.
I agree. I think it's very timely and topical.
James, do you have any thoughts? You're kind of new to this discussion and
I think being preemptive about it is a great idea. I I mean I come from a communication background, so I'm always very pro communication, especially when it comes to like this kind of thing. It's pretty nitty gritty, and it's always a challenge to figure out how to get things out to like not even just the boards, but the general public.
Mhm.
I mean, kind of in my head, I'm sort of thinking about things like, you know, someone who is coming to Wakefield that buys a property in Wakefield that's coming from outside of Wakefield. Um, is there a way to get them the information like as they like step in the door of their new house? Like, hey, here's like a pamphlet of like something that have the conservation commission, like, this is what to look out for, and kind of like we were discussing earlier, although it seems like it's not really going to be that big of a concern, but if you notice something on your property that looks like this, like reach out to us, be preemptive about it so that you don't have to go through all this rigmarole unexpectedly. But yeah, I think going to the boards and just kind of having a short little thing about, like, this is what a vernal pool is, this is what it looks like, this is what, like, alteration is considered and what it's not considered, would be really, really helpful, I think.
Eleanor, are
Yeah,
you looking to do that to heighten your awareness of when they're looking at their own permitting?
I wasn't, but James brought up a really good point because it's something I've wondered for years. Like, isn't there a mechanism? The assessor's office knows when a property has sold. Do we periodically get a list of properties sold? And we just send a brochure. Hey, you've got a you live within 100 feet of a wetland. Please reach out to the commission if you have questions, or here's a little FAQ about living with wetlands or something like that. Because
Right.
go on, Judy, sorry.
Well, then you would just have to be careful that you were sure where the line was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because you
I
might
mean, that
have
gets tricky.
yeah, so you might have like a wetland on your property, but if the house could be a couple 100 feet away, you'd have to just make the assumption of like someone doing work within 100 feet. So there's kind of a lot of properties that you wouldn't know exactly where the wetland is or exactly what work would be regulated. I think you'd end up just finding a lot of, like, I don't know where you would draw the line of who to contact or who not to contact, or like making the assumption that someone's doing work in a certain part of their property.
Oh, no, it's not.
But even the case
It's
with the
work. It's
wetlands,
just to make sure they know, because you don't want people saying, "Oh, I didn't know," and we certainly hear that a lot. Go ahead.
right? But even if it's on a neighboring property, I think it just gets tricky to try to. I understand what you're going
Yeah.
for, but I think that could create more problems.
Fair enough. Okay.
Well, I think my conception of it is that it's not targeted. It's everybody.
Mhm.
We give it to anybody and everybody, even if they don't have a wetland anywhere near them, like just a pamphlet saying, like, hey, did you know, WPA, take a look at your property, poke around, see if you might have, a wet piece of land on your property. And if you do, then you maybe want to, like, look into it.
Mhm. I think there are other towns that are, I feel like we used to have more material like that on our website, and I don't know if we can bring that back because that is sort of helpful. But yeah, to your point, James, we at a certain time we probably need to spend more time on outreach and education and just letting people know.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have received things from, it's been a while, the Conservation Department, about either, because I have a wetland on my property, and and I'm either in the AC kind of area, or I'm like right next to it, and so I got some information that, hey, there's this AC. I had no idea. And you know, so at some point there have been some efforts along those lines, which I certainly found informative. I
Yeah.
learned a lot from it.
It sounds like the ACEC you're saying.
I
Yeah.
think I
Golden
received
Hills, yeah.
something about the AC, yeah, the Golden Hills.
Isn't the newly certified vernal pool near the ACEC too?
I think it is.
Yeah. So, for example, we have people who are dumping there, an informative letter that says, hey, don't dump on, like, please don't dump on
Right. But
town.
yeah, ACEC, area of critical environmental concern.
Mhm.
So kind of like a special
Yeah,
environmental area.
It doesn't really give
Biodiversity.
much enhanced protection. It's kind of a misnomer, the title of it.
Yeah, the form that I got was about the ACEC and just saying, hey, please consider, if I remember, because this is some time ago, please be thoughtful about what chemicals you use on your property.
Mhm. Yeah,
I don't think
think
it said you're not allowed to. I think it said, please consider was the gist of it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that you're not allowed to do is like filling in a wetland, even with a replication. Like that's pretty much the only restriction we have in the ACECs.
right.
Um,
I think the general point is just educating people so they feel like they understand, oh, this is a wetland, or this is a protected area, or I really shouldn't dump on town land, my yard waste. Just
Well, I
all of
know when new residents come into town, they're given a packet on recycling, the town pit, things like that. So maybe it could be part of that.
Ooh, that would be great.
And they used to have that Citizens 101. I don't know if they still have it.
they had it last year, I think,
Yeah, I don't know if that, I
Town
think they
Day,
do.
something like that.
They used to have a separate where the other boards used to go and talk about different things. I think they may have phased it out because there wasn't a lot of
I bet it-
participation from new citizens, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love that suggestion, Judy. That's a good one. So are we ready to move on? Is there any more comments on the bylaw or anything else related to the bylaw?
I think it would be helpful to think about, do we want to plan to have on the next agenda discussion about the regulator? It doesn't have to be the next agenda, but I mean, we at least probably don't want to lose track of it entirely before the meeting.
Okay. I think that makes sense.
Before
What
the
was that you
next,
said?
I was saying that before, if not the next meeting, then in an upcoming meeting, return to the regulations, which I think it would be good for us to have a draft before town meeting. It's not required, but it's something people have asked us to do. And specifically that question of administrative review. Which is section 3. Maybe. But otherwise, no, nothing else on the bylaw.
We move on to agent update.
So we have the DEP training next Tuesday. It's at 6 p.m. James, I'm not sure if you got the link yet, but we had someone from Mass DEP. They do a lot of like training and informational stuff. They're coming to our we have a meeting with them next Tuesday for like a training session just for our commission. So it's sort of based around how to review a file and like things to look at. So I'll send you the link to that and some info on that.
Thank you.
Send that to me as well, along with the time and all of the particulars.
Yeah, I'll just send it to you all as a reminder.
That would be fantastic.
And then the next day, the 26th, 200 Guanapawa is doing the last round of their invasive removal. So they mentioned this to us somewhat recently. So they'll be out there. I think they said no equipment, just hand picking, cleaning up the rest of the invasives on site, or the cleaning up what they had worked on before.
I'm sorry, you just cut out for me. Which project?
200 Quantipower.
Okay.
Yeah. That was like the third year of the 3-year invasive management plan that they had along the lake shore.
Anything else, or is that it?
That's all I was going to ask about the planning board meeting, but we got through all that. I guess just to summarize that, you had said the planning board was September 8th. I'll get that going along later on the agenda if I can. And then town council on the 14th, if possible, for the bylaw.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. And then Ethan, I had asked you a question about like how our sort of tree policy comes into play on sort of these larger developments. I couldn't tell if you responded to me more recently.
I just said I'll take a look at
Okay,
that.
okay.
The policy it's not any more strict than the WPA. It just gives like a guidance of what you do. It's not typically used on larger sites. We tend to just review it with like the notice of intent. But I'll take a look at that, see what some other towns have. Because that's a good question about, at what point does the policy not apply, or
Yeah,
especially if you have a lot of trees.
The order of conditions has the tree replacement.
right. But I think in a case where you do a lot of clear cutting, I think in other projects we've had like I've seen the applicant has provided a count of trees.
Right. That's part of the order. They
Okay.
do a linear foot count.
Okay, but maybe in some, I guess that was we got a letter from a neighbor that was actually addressed to you, Judy, kind of
Right, on Salem Street. But how much, I didn't look at the map to see how much of that was jurisdictional to the commission.
Yes, I think it would only be the back 100 feet and where we were left the sort of 200 feet buffer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, 200, excuse me, it's getting late. 25-foot buffer. And I think his question was like an expectation of the tree. I went to the site and just across the street from there, so spoke with him. Expecting some of the trees along the sides to remain as part of, there's a certain setback to the abutters, say 10 feet or whatever. But just wanting to understand why our tree policy didn't apply, in this particular case.
Yeah.
Was that all jurisdictional area?
What's that?
Was that all a jurisdictional area?
Well, I would say 100 feet would fall within, right? 100 feet from the wetland would fall under our jurisdiction. So if I would say that probably the 75 feet is all house and pavement now, with a few trees kind of in the middle. I'd have
I
to go
think it
back
gets
to plans.
complicated with the larger sites, because usually like the further from the wetland, the not that it's not important, but like the less important it is to protect the trees. So you don't often have like a one-for-one replacement. They just do like a combination of trees and plants, and I guess the lawn is not really the same thing, but
But
you could look at the site like under the scope of the tree policy, as long as it's still within your jurisdiction, like to enforce with the WPA.
I guess I don't
It's just,
understand why we hold.
sorry, it's just not what's often been done.
Okay, no, I was just curious why we hold homeowners to a different standard than,
But I think homeowners, it's generally when it's closer, when it's around the 25 foot. Because the tree replacement policy is a policy, so that's appealable.
okay.
And what would the commission have done different? I mean, that's, I may want to look at it. Would you have not allowed any tree clearing?
Uh, no, I think, where you have an undeveloped parcel, I mean, I think you'd want to have a little more, retain some of that natural, trees, like in between neighbors and
Right, but
development. Yeah,
right, but if it's specific to how you're protecting a wetland resource, then the buffer for a neighbor, that's something that could be parsed out maybe at the ZBA. I know the planning board
yeah,
usually
look at that.
requires a buffer.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty stunning to go by it and.
Right, no, I know what you mean. It's
Yeah.
always a shock.
Yes, and maybe I need to ask better questions of the sort of, here's the present, here's what it's gonna look like during construction and the final, because I think when I'm looking at a set of plans, I imagine perhaps more is going to be left untouched
Right.
than what's reasonable. So again, it could just be, it's more for my education, when people raise these questions, I want to understand the answer. But that's all.
And I think for that site, there's gonna be almost like more plantings closer to the wetland. Like we weren't really comparing it to like the neighbor's setback, but protecting the wetlands, obviously, I guess denser around the edge of the wetlands as a trade-off of the rest of the site being a little more sparse. But it's not going to be as beneficial as it was being just trees, but it's just part of what you can kind of consider with the notice of intent, but there's definitely limits on what we can do.
Yeah, I think we were given, when I raised it, we were given a handful of bushes to put at the back, right? To kind of provide some sort of, I guess, protection, so people couldn't just like walk into the wetland, if you will. But the rest we really didn't have any say in. So it's just something to think. I think we talked about that the previous meeting, just maybe finding a way for us to comment on plans or just add our wish items to ZBA and planning board, as these come along.
Is it a single road in or is it a series of cul-de-sacs?
In this example,
Yeah, I drove by, I saw it, before you
Oh.
commented it last week or whenever, and it was shocking. I agree. And those trees were just lopped off all on the right-hand side. But I was just trying to figure out what the configuration of the plan was, whether it was a straight road in to the back with houses on either side, or is there a cul-de-sac arrangement that would be a little gentler on the, visuals.
I think there's a big circle and then, I don't, I don't know, almost like an F or an L or something. It's definitely maximizing the developable space. To the point, I think the way it was designed, they probably had to take down pretty much every single tree just to maneuver, and put
Well,
things.
in a cluster zone, that's a very different thing. You get a lot more green buffer on the side, on the round, on the periphery,
Mhm.
with the houses sort of in a cluster kind of arrangement on the more interior side of a
Yeah.
lot. And I didn't know what that was. I couldn't tell. They just were bulldozing
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very long site. So
Yeah.
so they had like the road going straight in and then some cul-de-sac parking lot combination towards the end.
Yeah. And it's also like a little more level now, but I think there was sort of like a natural swale to the right as you faced it, the Nablus Way, and that's just flat to the fence. So again, maybe somewhere along the lines in the plan that was explained, but I guess in my mind, if we had a policy that was enforceable, it would be, or even with planning board, it'd be nice to be able to say, okay, you're taking 100 trees out. Can you leave in this critical area that's kind of wetlands? How about you leave 50 along the sides or something to provide buffering with neighbors but anyway. Doesn't sound like we can do that now, so. Thanks for, Judy, thank you for that explanation. That was helpful. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll
I'll
make a
make a
motion to
motion to
adjourn.
adjourn. Oh,
I'll jump at once.
Everybody.
Okay, I'll say first by Jennifer, seconded by Drew.
yep.
I
Second.
say, okay, Jennifer,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
James Cerrone,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
and I myself am a yes. Thank you guys for everything. Have a good night. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Ethan.